Welcome to number 8 in our series on the time of Jacob's trouble. If you haven't reviewed our previous 7 videos, I do recommend that you do them. Number 1, the houses. Number 2, the ecclesia. Number 3, the times and seasons. Number 4, the temples. Number 5, the beasts, censored on YouTube. You'll need to catch it on Rumble. Number 6, the Great Reset. And finally, number 7, the Antichrist and his aliases. Picking up where we left off on our last video about the so-called Antichrist, today we are going to look at some applicants or contenders for that position. It's a very, very long chapter in the book, so it's going to need to be broken up into several sections. We're going to do the first part today. So what we're going to manage to cover today is based on an Excel spreadsheet that I put together, because what I discovered was that everybody seems to identify some characteristics of the Antichrist. I really thought we need to identify all the criterion, so I catalogued them in a spreadsheet and I broke them down into their units to identify exactly in minute biblical detail what the criterion were. Then what I did was I googled who is the Antichrist, and I came up with a short list of 6 candidates. And we're going to look at each one of those candidates today in relation to every single criterion. Today we're going to cover the job specs of this guy and look at the various features in relation to each of these candidates. Now, since the earliest days of Christendom, people have speculated about many despotic leaders who might in fact fill the bill of the Antichrist, and there have been many candidates proposed over time. And many of these have been based on some sort of 666 analysis. But as we've previously shown, the 666 or 616, some manuscripts say, calculation is possibly more likely to be related to the false prophet and not the Antichrist. Now, many historical despotic leaders in history have definitely had the spirit of the Antichrist, but they haven't been the man of lawlessness spoken of in the pages of Scripture. Yet each passing day draws us closer to the revealing of the son of perdition. But we cannot be sure that we've quite arrived yet. What we can be sure of is that we're in the beginning of birth pains, as set out in the Olivet Discourse. So, based on that Google search, we are now going to examine the 6 candidates who have made our shortlist: Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Pope Francis, Bashar al-Assad, Recep Erdogan, and Muqtada al-Sadr. And we're going to attempt as best as possible to measure each of these against the actual biblical text. And clearly at least 5, probably even all of these, cannot possibly be right. Because many characters, living and historical, have wielded the spirit of Antichrist, but only one can bear the job title of the son of perdition or man of lawlessness. Each pundit who proposed one of the candidates have correlated a handful of criteria to determine their outcomes. But if this is to be biblically correct, each candidate must meet all, not just some of them. And to date, what I can find in my research is that only one of these candidates meets most, I emphasize most, but not all of the requirements. So job spec number 1 we're going to talk about the lineage of this fellow. And there are three significant passages in Genesis 3, Genesis 6, and Daniel 2, which speak about the lineage of this character. And we can see clearly that they are referring to a hybrid being, a mix. This is the day when in Genesis, God is speaking of when Eve's descendant, that is the Messiah, will crush the head of the serpent's descendant. Now, we can ask if that offspring listed is figurative, and it could be. But the scripture, when you look at the original text, speaks about a literal being born of the serpent's own semen, his own zerah. And interestingly, the prophecy in Genesis 3 precedes the account in Genesis 6, when the fallen angels procreated with humans to create a hybrid race of part human, part demigod beings. And as a result, the DNA of man became corrupted. Really, guys, this is, I think, the most overlooked indicator of the prime qualification for the man of lawlessness. He will be one of the Nephilim, part human, part fallen angel. Let's consider the context of this hybrid giant, which I put to you is the context of the Archangel Michael binding up the evil watchers, which you can read about in the book of Enoch, and hurling them into the abyss to be let out at the time of the end. I cover this in video 7. In Revelation 9, we read that in the abyss there is a leader whose name is Abaddon or Apollyon, and he is let out at the time of the end. And I want to point out that Abaddon or Apollyon are synonymous with the word perdition. So this evil creature, the leader of the grotesque monsters in the abyss, the stuff of legend, could it be the mythical Greek god Apollo, the god of death and plague, which is based more on fact than on fiction? So I am proposing that Abaddon or Apollyon will likely bear a son. Whether this will be through the conventional method of procreation or some nefarious transhumanism technology, I don't know. But you have to consider the genuine, and I'm talking about genuine testimonies of UFO abductions and the reproductive experiments with just a smidgen of awareness. So remember that the son of perdition or man of lawlessness go hand in glove with the days of Noah. They are inextricably linked. Now what follows is purely speculative, I emphasize that, and circumstantial. But hear me out on this. There's been much controversy over Obama's birth certificate, and those who question his birth certificate are quickly denigrated as conspiracy theorists. But a thorough examination of the facts shows that his Hawaiian birth certificate is indeed fake. Now, Obama himself gave a live televised speech in Kenya acknowledging that he came from Kenya. In 2011, when questions emerged about his legitimacy as a United States president, given he was not born in the USA, the White House promptly released a birth certificate, which you can view online in the Obama archive, suggesting that he was in fact born in Honolulu. But there is a video where Obama is addressing a small group, clearly stating that he is Kenyan born. And if any of you have been following Sheriff Joe Arpaio's compelling video on YouTube showing the 9 points of forgery in his birth certificate, you'll find the information compelling. It's no wonder the globalist beast came after Joe Arpaio with everything they had to discredit him. Let's consider the curious case of a certain Loretta Fuddy, who was the state health director who verified the Hawaiian birth certificate. Loretta was the sole fatality of a small plane crash in December 2013. And there is GoPro video footage, you can see it on YouTube, inside the plane of the crash in the sea and survivors in the water. And Fuddy is clearly seen alive and then dragged underwater by a scuba diver, never to be seen again. Now, Fuddy's digital footprint is dubious, to be sure. When I did a reverse Google image search on her profile pictures, I found a Facebook profile for a certain Deliana Antone, not vaguely similar to Loretta Fuddy. But Fuddy, should be noted, was the chairwoman of Subud USA from 2006 to 2008. And the last public entry on her Facebook page was 10 December 2013, just days before she supposedly died. Now, I also want to point out that there are many contacts and friends on her Facebook page, it's still live, you can look at it today, that have the surname Fuddy. So, there's a very strange connection between Fuddy, the FBI, and charges of felony treason. Go look that one up. We continue with Obama. In March 2017, Obama's half-brother Malik Obama posted a picture on his Twitter, which has since been deleted, showing a Kenyan birth certificate for Barack, and he implied that it was the real deal. And obviously many fact-checkers jumped on the bandwagon and debunked the Kenyan birth certificate. But if anyone knows the truth about his birth, I would imagine it would be his brother. Subsequently, he tweeted a picture of Barack's foreign student ID card from Columbia University. And then again, later, he tweeted showing a copy of his birth certificate with the question, "What is this?" The most curious of his tweets has been this one in March 2019, where he asked, "Is Obama a Martian?" Now, what would prompt a man to ask if his brother is an alien from another planet? I don't know. Question is, does he know something we don't know? For me, it certainly is a red flag. Now, in a visit to the pyramids in 2015, Obama joked that he looked like Akhenaten, the ancient Egyptian pharaoh. But even prior to his visit to the pyramids, there were conspiracy theories abounding that he was in fact a clone of Akhenaten, and that Michelle is a clone of Queen Tai, Akhenaten's mother. And I would have to say that there's an uncanny resemblance to both of them, but you can make of that what you will. Now, some believe that the Anunnaki, which was a variant tribe of Nephilim, planned to bring back their dead through cloning. And we're reminded of Jesus' words in the Olivet Discourse, "As it was in the days of Noah, so will the coming of the Son of Man be." The days of Noah, we remind ourselves, are when angels mated with humans and produced a hybrid clan of people, no longer made in the image of God. So I grant you that this is conjecture based on some really bizarre circumstantial evidence, but I'd say that there's a strong possibility that his real father may in fact be more sinister than that is stated on his genuine, or even for that matter, his forged birth certificate. And we're reminded of that first prophecy. Various characters have been suggested as being Obama's natural father, and we're going to look at those. The first being Barack Obama Sr., who was a Marxist in Kenya and Ann Dunham's first husband. The second is Lolo Soetoro, her second husband. Now, some have suggested that he is in fact Obama's natural father because many of his early school records show his name as Barry Soetoro, but he was about 4 years old, in fact, when Dunham married Soetoro. The next one is Muhammad Sabu, also known as Bapak, the founder of Subud, an Islamic cult founded in Indonesia but based in Chicago, Obama's hometown. Obama's Subud name is apparently Subarkaha, which is what is shown on his mother's passport application. Another contender is Frank Marshall Davis, who is Obama's communist mentor. One of the bizarre suggestions is that Malcolm X, who's a Muslim minister and civil rights activist, is in fact his father. And finally, as we've just discussed, Akhenaten, the famous Egyptian pharaoh. Now, various characters have likewise been suggested as Obama's mom. The first and most obvious is Stanley Ann Dunham, a social anthropologist, also known as Ann Soetoro. And there's another theory that a certain Elizabeth Anna Duke, who's listed on the FBI's most wanted domestic terrorist list, also known as Betty Ann Duke, Elizabeth Ann Duke, Betty Weir, or Betty Ann. Now, certain Martha Trowbridge says that Dunham and Duke are in fact the same person, but I really cannot independently corroborate this, so it's likely nonsense and I'm going to discount it. However, there's not much found on the internet about the elusive Ann Dunham. There is some limited clean information about her from many sources, but surprisingly not much about her at all. We know she was an American anthropologist specializing in economic anthropology and rural development of Indonesia. She was born in 1942 in Wichita, Kansas, and apparently died of uterine cancer in November of 1995. So most sources do list her and Obama Sr. as the parents of Barack. She later married Lolo Soetoro, who became Barack's stepfather, and hence at school Barack was commonly known as Barry Soetoro. But some deeper digs into the background of Ann Dunham show a potentially more sinister story, which, just like Obama's college records, are in fact off limits. There are rumors of loose living, prostitution, and affairs. And given the scarcity of information and the massive secrecy about all things Obama, it begs the question, why the elaborate cover-up about his identity? Was it simply to install someone into the White House who was ineligible for the presidency? Or was he in fact bred by the New World Order globalist elitists, specifically to do their bidding? Well, Tom Fife actually thought so. So without looking at any of the other criteria, and based on this standard alone, the standard of the son of perdition being one of the Nephilim, a possible, I emphasize possible contender for the position is in fact Barack Obama. His paternity is in doubt, and the Nephilim factor, in my opinion, is the standard for identifying the son of perdition, the son of Apollyon. Okay, let's move on to Trump's lineage. Now, his maternal and paternal family tree can be traced back to the 1400s. But one source has claimed that Trump is in fact the son of Satan. According to the HuffPost, Trump was adopted 3 days after his birth by Mary Ann and Frederick Christ Trump. Now, because of the importance of this prophecy, the claims are worthy of serious consideration. So I diligently clicked on every single link in the HuffPost article to identify the source material of their claims. Suffice it to say, the hyperlinks literally turned up zero evidence. The boldest of all the claims is that WikiLeaks confirms that Trump is the son of Satan, which is in fact just a bold-faced lie. They did no such thing. WikiLeaks has an excellent search engine which allows you to search all their links, and I can assure you there's nothing on their website to confirm the HuffPost claim. So at best, I have to say that the HuffPost article is satire. At worst, it's a hit piece. Either way, it's absolute rubbish and cannot be verified. So what about our other candidates? Do any of them meet the criterion to say that they are the offspring of Satan or a celestial being? Well, the other candidates likewise have got well-documented family trees on many genealogy websites. So that leaves us with one of two possibilities. Either, if the son of perdition is alive today, one nominee that fits the bill is based on the possibility that he is a hybrid Nephilim, and that is Barack Obama. Or the other possibility is that the timeline is wrong and he has not yet surfaced on the global scene. But regarding this criteria, the only one who might meet it is Barack Hussein Obama. So this is a fun prophecy, that this little horn would have eyes like the eyes of a man. What on earth does that mean? Eyes like a man. Well, are there any other type of eyes on a man? I suppose it might only make sense if you understand that this individual is like a man, but isn't a man. I don't know. He's a hybrid, a Nephil, part man, part fallen watcher. But it's equally valid to say that any human being who has ever walked the earth has eyes like that of a man. So I guess we're going to err on the side of caution and tick all the boxes on this criterion for now. Now here we have another feature of this character, that he has a fierce face. Now we have to wonder what that is all about. The original word is az, which can be translated as strong, mighty, fierce, powerful. But it's probably true of all the candidates, but honestly that's just a subjective observation. Beauty, as they say, is in the eye of the beholder. Now, an internet search for image search, that is, for any of the nominees, or possibly for anyone on the planet, will find that their faces are sometimes meek, smiling and happy, and at other times mighty or fierce. So unless something really dramatic emerges, I'm not sure that at this stage we can deduce anything of note from this attribute. So we're just going to accept that all our candidates meet this standard. So let's talk about the line of authority of this character. We noticed that he gave, the dragon that is, his authority to the beast, and they that worshipped the beast said, who is like him? So the beast gets his power directly from the dragon. We need to just re-emphasize that the beast of the sea mentioned in the first part of Revelation 13 is in fact the globalist New World Order, not an individual. However, woven into that passage is evidence that one of the crowns is likely the son of perdition, the man of lawlessness. So does he get his power and authority directly from the dragon, in other words, from Satan himself? Well, it's not easy to prove or disprove this one at face value, but logically by their fruits we shall know them. The other thing we need to consider is that which country is represented by a dragon. It's not a trick question. It's easy to answer. The answer is China. So next we're going to analyze our candidates. Right, let's talk about the dragon's power, and we'll begin with Obama. Now, Obama and his cronies benefited financially with his ties to China in the tune of billions of dollars. Although this is denied by the mainstream media, the evidence is emerging that Obama was closely allied with the Chinese hacking of the 2020 US presidential election. His wingman Biden was equally compromised with many powerful countries such as ding 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 Ukraine and China. So tick. As for Trump, well, his anti-China rhetoric is well documented, and his claims in the faith of the God of the Jews and Christians implies that he is not empowered by the dragon. As for the Pope, he stated himself that he looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. And he in fact presented Obama, Erdogan and also Putin and Abbas with the Dragon and Angel of Peace bronze medallion. The satanic symbolism and practice of Satanism within the Vatican is certainly well documented, and he himself has claimed to be the devil. Now what about the others? Assad, Erdogan and Sadiq are all Muslims, worshippers of Allah, not the God of the Bible. Ergo, the God that they revere is not the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, but a counterfeit, the dragon. Assad likewise has strong ties to China, as does Erdogan. And Muqtada's allegiance to China, somewhat unclear, we're not sure. But either way, all three qualify based on their religious dogma. After all, we know that he who is not with God is against him. So our candidate thing turns out that maybe 5 qualify and 1 does not. Now there's an interesting passage in Revelation where the writer John tells us about these 7 kings arise, and then he talks about this beast as being the 8th, but is of the 7 and going into perdition. So he's clearly talking about the son of perdition here. But this is a very curious passage. He is of the 7, but he's the 8th. So what does it mean? Well, I suppose he could be referencing the former global kingdoms: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Roman, and the Ottoman empires. And commentators have certainly surmised that this beast is of the seventh kingdom, but it could also mean equally that it's any of those mentioned earlier, because any one of them could be the seven spoken of. Could it be that it's some sort of eclectic blend of all of these? I don't know. But all we do know is that the final kingdom is a composite of all the power and might of every preceding domain, all rolled into one terrible beast. Remember, we've learned that there are layered meanings in prophecy. But the widely held view that John is referencing the seventh kingdom, the Ottoman Empire, not in fact a revived Roman Empire, is talking about a Muslim caliphate. So at face value, the statement is about a beast who was around for a while, then disappeared, and now is back. It sort of makes no sense. But there is this curious section about the number of kings who have preceded him. Now, Joel Richardson contends that the coming lawless one will be a Muslim centered in the Middle East. Doug Hamp says that there are two critical things about this: that the seventh kingdom is the Islamic Ottoman Empire, and the final Antichrist will be a revived Nimrod using some sort of modern technology, maybe something like cloning. Now, there's widespread infiltration of radical Islam with a view to Sharia law across the nations. So we just remind ourselves to draw a distinction between the kingdom and the leader. Although most scholars hold that the beast and the Antichrist are synonymous, I would say that based on our previous studies, go refer back to our earlier videos, passages in both the Old and New Testament, the beast refers to the kingdom or the system, and the crown represents the leader. John, in fact, pivots between the empire and the leader, and it's really important to have discernment when reading the text. So the end-time kingdom beast is a composite of all the historical world empires, but likely of the seventh kingdom, the Islamic kingdom, which was yet to come at the time of John's writing. One other perspective I considered, think about the G8, which became the G7 after Russia was booted from the G8 following the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Don't know, it's a possibility. So, let's talk about Obama. Is he Muslim? Well, the mainstream media would have us believe that he's an all-American Christian fella. And the liberal left-wing fact-checkers go to great lengths to showcase him thus. But the truth simply does not support the narrative, so let's examine the facts. He grew up in a Muslim community. His family includes generations of Muslims, quote unquote. He attended a Muslim madrasa, school in Indonesia. During an interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, he stated that he's a Muslim before being quickly corrected by Stephanopoulos. It was hilarious. In a 2007 interview with the New York Times, Obama recited the Muslim call to prayer in a perfect Arabic accent. And he went on to say that the Muslim call to prayer was, and I quote, the prettiest sound on earth. He often quotes from the Quran, saying, the Holy Quran says, or according to the Holy Quran. And he glorifies, praises, and defends Islam. In fact, has claimed that America is no longer a Christian nation, but embraces Islam. We continue with Obama, who we find is often photographed dressed in traditional Muslim garb. He bowed deeply before the Saudi Muslim king, a courtesy he didn't even give to the British monarch at the time. The Islamic Caliphate in the Middle East flourished on his watch, and he's closely allied with the militant terrorist Muslim Brotherhood, embracing members of the Brotherhood into the White House. For instance, he appointed Huma Abedin and her brother Hassan. He issued a secret directive outlining the Muslim Brotherhood as a moderate alternative to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. He bypassed Congress and gave $1.5 billion to the Muslim Brotherhood. And his parting shot from the White House was to send $1.7 billion in cash in an unmarked cargo plane to the mullahs of Iran. We move on to Trump, whose aversion to radical Islamic terrorism is certainly well known and well documented. Some have suggested that the Abraham Accord places him in the covenant with many prophecy, but we have to consider the context of Daniel's prophecy, which speaks of worship or sacrifice, not peace between nations that do not border Israel. Moreover, the Abraham Accord is not a 7-year contract. This is important to note. Daniel 9:26-27 specifies that it is for 1 week, in other words, 7 years. So Trump doesn't meet this standard. As for the Pope, he's a Jesuit and at face value not part of the Muslim Caliphate, but he actually promotes Chrislam, which is an heretical merger of Christianity and Islam, founded by Rick Warren of Saddleback Community Church. Now, we know that Yehovah is the only true God. Allah is not He, and Quran is not the Word of God. Exodus reminds us that we shall have no other gods before God. I am Yahweh, I am Yehovah, and there is no one besides me. There is no God. So Allah is not the true God. The Pope signed a global peace covenant in October 2019 with the Sunni Muslim leader Sheikh Ahmed Al Tayeb in Abu Dhabi, and he is very closely connected with the United Arab Emirates Interfaith Synagogue, Church and Mosque, the Abrahamic Family House. So his alliance with Islam is a step beyond the Abraham Accords. This is more than seeking to live in peace with others. It's about integrating the Abrahamic faith into a single religion. It is the ultimate heresy. So what of the others? Erdogan, Assad and Sadia are easier to assign. They are all Islamists. Erdogan has been declared the leader of the entire Muslim world, and he calls for an Islamist army to invade Israel. Assad belongs to the Alawite minority, a Shiite sect, and Sadia is an Iraqi Shia militia. So they all qualify. So the outcome of it is that 5 of our candidates qualify on this one does not. So Daniel spelled out to us that this final kingdom is divided. We have to ask ourselves what components make up a kingdom. The biblical account of world empires, we learn that iron represents the Roman Empire. So what then is the potter's clay? In Isaiah, we learn that we are the clay and he is the potter. We learn this in Job as well. And also in Jeremiah, he says that the house of Israel is molded as with a potter. So Daniel 2 tells us that this final kingdom is divided. It's partly strong and partly broken. And he speaks about the iron mingling with miry clay, and that they mingle themselves with the seed of the men. They mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they don't cling to one another. So I suspect that this is another reference to the Nephilim nature of the son of perdition. So which of our candidates have led a divided kingdom? We begin with Obama. Daniel says that this seed does not mingle with the seed of men, so we're talking hybrids, part human, part watcher, and we're full circle back to the Nephilim. In addition, Obama's house is divided. He speaks with forked tongue about racial harmony, and under his leadership, the United States became known as the divided states of America. So he gets a tick. What about Trump? Well, I think this is a no-brainer. The United States of America is definitely united no more. There's a chasm as vast as it could be. The left and right are deeply divided. It's also the elite minority would have us believe. But either way, Trump gets a tick. What about Assad? Well, the same is true for Assad. There's division within his own ranks and even indeed within his own family. Tick. We move on to Erdogan. Turkey has definitely been fracturing under Erdogan's rule, so he gets the nod. How about the Pope? Well, he has caused such a massive rift within the Catholic Church, and his liberal stance on same-sex marriage has shocked devout believers or followers of the Catholic faith worldwide. His embrace of Eastern religious practices and artifacts is nothing short of blasphemous. Moreover, he's a globalist, promoting open borders and climate change issues. And he's reportedly said of himself, and I quote, "It is not to be excluded that I will enter history as the one who split the Catholic Church." He gets the tick. How about Sadia? Well, it's not a stretch to say that Iraq is a nation divided. For example, in 2008, Sadia's Mahdi movement engaged in clashes with the Iraqi military, resulting in 50 deaths. Likewise, he gets a tick. So let's summarize. The bottom line is, all of ours meet the divided kingdom criteria. So John tells us that the beast that he saw existed once. He was in power before. He was there once, and he points to the rise of Abaddon or Apollyon. Remember our layers of biblical prophetic writing. So this is an allusion to Apollyon's offspring, the son of perdition. And we remind ourselves about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire and also the Ottoman Caliphate. Moreover, we need to consider presidencies or leaderships won and lost. Let's begin with Obama. Well, he was the 44th USA president for 2 terms from 2009 to 2017. And before that, he was a senator in Illinois for 3 years, so he gets the tick. Trump, well, he was the 45th president of the United States, so he was in power before. He existed once. The others, the Pope remains in control, as does Erdogan, Assad, and Sadir, as at the time of writing. So all of our candidates meet this standard. So we've heard that this character once existed. He was in power before, but now in Revelation we find that he's suffered a fatal wound. He's no longer around, but that he's going to crawl out of the bottomless pit and proceed to destruction. So again, we remind ourselves about the Revelation 13 the first part, which speaks about the beast of the sea, the beast of the nations, with its 7 heads and 10 crowns of the New World Order. But in verse 3, we find that he's speaking about one singular of his heads, plural, is wounded. Now, it could be any of the heads. You've got to refer back to our earlier videos. The political, military, religious, secret society, financial, commercial, health, education, communication, media, or entertainment. Any one of those is possible. But which head is it? Honestly, I have no idea. Could be any of them. But with the rapidity of events unfolding on the world stage, we might know soon enough. The power of all 7 heads seems to be growing more and more powerful by the day. The giants of today are not only hybrid abominations, they can be found in the social media platforms, the tech giants. You only have to look at the tip of the iceberg Twitter files that have just been released to find out how insidious it all is, and to see just how much the Judeo-Christian voices have been censored and silenced. But there is another possible interpretation. The rise and fall of Islam. During the Mongol invasion of AD 1258, Baghdad's capital was decimated and nearly all its inhabitants killed. So let's talk about a fatal wound. Have Trump and Obama suffered such a fatal wound? Well, both of their political careers are, to all intents and purposes, dead. And in Trump's case, his communication power has been removed by the media head of the beast of the sea. As for the others, Erdogan, Assad and Sadir all remain in political power, as does the Pope remain in religious power, so they don't get the tick. Fatal wound spoken of in the passages in the earlier slide might refer, in fact, to the assassination of Nimrod, which is recorded in the apocryphal book of Jasher. We note that Islam was only founded in the 7th century AD, but scholars sometimes attribute the title to the king of Nimrod. Now, it may be a stretch, but we'll give the benefit of a doubt on this score and won't give our Islamic candidates a tick on this criteria. So how does this look in the final analysis? We got 2 ticks, 4 crosses. Now the passage in Revelation 13 says the fatal wound of this New World Order beast was healed, and the whole world marveled at that. So we have a look that in 1258 AD, Baghdad's Islamic capital was flattened and nearly all its inhabitants were killed during the Mongol invasion. And no major city in what is now Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and the other Stan countries, in fact, escaped. But over time, they turned things around by converting the Mongols to Islam. And on this basis alone, our 4 Muslim nominees tick the box. So although as individuals, as candidates for the son of perdition, they're still in power, they haven't yet suffered the fatal wound. But in terms of the religion of Islam, they can be said to tick the box. gets complex. So let's begin with Obama. Has his fatal wound been healed? Well, he's certainly no longer president, but if he is the son of perdition, he'll be back. It's the first time in US history a former president, in fact, did not vacate DC. Within days of the 2016 election, Obama purchased a lavish house 2 miles from the White House and confirmed that he intended to remain in town for a few years. Then he moved Valerie Jarrett, his long-time senior advisor and confidant, into the house with him. Now you've got to understand the connection between the Obamas and Jarrett. She is Iranian-born and was Obama's secret emissary in Iran with the nuclear negotiations. She has strong ties to the communist Frank Marshall Davis. That quote comes from Judicial Watch. So now we have a corrupt but demented man in the Oval Office holding the title of President of the United States, a man who didn't bother to campaign, who couldn't draw a paid crowd to a rented car park, and can't string a coherent sentence together, is supposedly the leader of the free world. And he's been alleged to have a device implanted so that he can hear auditory prompts during speeches and debates, activated by a switch in his jacket. Now, Google hits will relegate this to conspiracy theory, but my friends, the evidence is out there. So if Biden is not the guy in charge, who is? Could it be this is Obama's third term? In John Haller's weekly prophecy updates, he usually refers to the O-Biden administration. Now, when he was asked about having a third term in office, Obama told Stephen Colbert, and I quote, "I used to say if I can make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement, in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that." Fancy that. The giants of today, the tech giants, ensure that anyone producing evidence of this is booted off their collective tech platforms. Now, Trump pulled the plug on the New World Order globalist plans, and they're on a bullet train to get the program back on track, as we can see. Whether he makes the art of the comeback his swan song remains to be seen. But he claims, with copious evidence, that the election was fraudulently decided. At the minimum, he has survived 2 attempts at political assassination in the form of impeachment. So I think even if he does make another bid at the Oval Office in 2024, he qualifies on the basis of surviving 2 political assassinations. How about the Pope? Well, certainly the papacy has suffered blows with the unprecedented resignation of Pope Benedict in 2013. And there's been the subsequent scandals of paedophilia and homosexuality within the papacy. But the papacy has stood its ground to this day. So I'm afraid no tick for the Pope. They are hanging in there. How about the others? Start with Erdogan. Well, it's accepted at a push that the death of Nimrod, the Islamist ancestral king, is indicative of a fatal wound. We must accept that the founding of Islam in the 7th century AD represents the healing of that deadly wound. So fair enough, we'll give them a tick. In summary, this is where we find ourselves. 5 ticks and a cross. In Revelation 17, we learn that this beast who comes up out of the abyss returns to power. He was before, he is not now. And John is emphasizing the point in Revelation 13:3, that he once walked the earth, arose from the abyss, and his fatal wound was healed. Remember, there are many layers of interpretation here. It's likely to have multiple meanings, but time alone will tell. So Obama could be back in power, calling the shots from behind the scenes. It's a maybe. But at this time, none of the other contenders come close. So I think that's all we can cope with for today. We're just about on an hour's time already. In our upcoming videos, I'm not sure how much I'll get done in each video. We're going to look at the attributes of the son of perdition. They're listed here. We're going to look at the religious affiliation. We're going to consider the sexual orientation, the season of his revealing and what happens around that. In addition, we are going to look at his job description and the details of the events surrounding the invasion and assault on Jerusalem. We will also consider his various accomplishments and the marvels that the world will see. We're going to talk about the wars that are prophesied. We are also going to be looking in particular at the final events, the winners and losers of our shortlisted candidates. Well, thanks for listening, folks. If you've got this far, I do hope you've been enjoying our series. Please do click and subscribe, hit the notification bells, and write comments, ask questions, interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. Normally I would include the bibliography in the description field, but for this section the biblio is just too large. And so I've included it in the next slides if anyone is interested to stick around and see where I got my information from.